This video is about the startup costs of going into business for yourself as a consulting arborist. And this is not starting a firm, this is just being a solo practitioner. There's going to be a couple of things to keep in mind. One, when I first started out, I was part-time at a tree service. So I had access to a library. I sometimes borrowed things like my hard hat that I didn't need immediately. So I went through my expenses and added them back, even though I technically didn't spend that money the first year. I already had certain things like what I would wear for a job, my boots, a vehicle, things like that. When I go through the expenses, I'll explain some of the differences where you may or may not differ. And I also had subsidized health insurance, and I still have subsidized health insurance. Otherwise, depending on your location, you might be looking at multiple hundreds, even 1,000 plus to get health insurance. Here are my list of expenses. I've broken them down to absolutely necessary, in my opinion, nice to have, and optional. And I'm just going to run through these really quickly, and then I'll explain them a little bit more. I chose to hire an accountant to set up my books and to file my tax return. So setting up my books was $135, and filing my taxes was $540 for the first year. The taxes will obviously vary depending on how complex your situation is. Then I paid $20 for a LLC statement of information. In California, this is something that you have to refile. You have to pay this again every so often. And what I did not include was the LLC fee. In California, that's $800, which is high compared to other states, but the first year was actually waived. Then I have a business license, but only for the city that I was based in, for about $30. I just got business licenses as I did more jobs in other cities, so that it wasn't an immediate expense. Then I have business insurance. I have two types. The first one was car insurance. You do want your car to be covered for business purposes, and I've heard that the cheapest way to do this is to talk to your insurance company and just add on some business coverage. But I had AAA at the time and they were just completely unresponsive, so I got it through my business insurance broker. Then the business insurance I have is $3,200. That is actually, my understanding is that's actually pretty high, but I'm good with this company, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. That includes commercial, like general liability, professional liability. Then QuickBooks. You don't have to use QuickBooks. I'm sure there's other options. It ended up being about $320 for a 1-year subscription. I started out with the lowest option to save money, and I quickly realized, or I read, that it was not going to be able to do the things I needed, so I upgraded it. Then my computer did not come with Adobe Acrobat or Microsoft Word, so I bought those two programs with a lifetime license for about $260. And lifetime license is different from subscription. Nowadays there's a lot of subscription softwares. I got membership to my local ISA chapter for $60 and Ask a membership for consulting arborists for $550. That one's a bit hard to swallow, especially if you're just starting out, but I mean, you gotta spend money to make money. Okay, then I got business cards for $20. So there are a lot of options where you could even reduce your expenses further. For example, if you have some bookkeeping or accounting background, or if you're willing to put in the work to watch accounting videos and stuff like that, you can do your books and your tax return yourself. I just wanted to make sure it was done right, and I didn't have any experience in that. So he's definitely helped me fix things, and I think that's really important because it just gets so much worse as you move on. Being a consulting arborist or some kind of arborist doesn't mean that you're a good business person or that you know finances, especially if you were working for a company where all you did was consulting and you didn't handle any, let's say like collecting money or things like that. That can be a very jarring experience. So when you have money, you can pay people to do things that would otherwise take a lot more of your time. For the insurance, I picked a company that the tree service I worked for really vouched for. They had huge huge compliments, really raved about that company, and to me, that was good enough. I think I have more coverage than other arborists that I know, but what you could also do is start with something really cheap, especially if you're not doing any kind of big projects. But for my situation, I knew I was immediately going to be working for larger clients with higher insurance needs, and this amount probably relates to that. Then QuickBooks. One of the things that I want to practice in my business is to make sure that I'm paying for the right thing and not cheaping out to begin with. So I did cheap out first with QuickBooks. I learned very quickly that if you go too far with that option, the numbers don't transfer to the next level of subscription. It would be so much more work to then have to transfer all of your data to a new version of QuickBooks if that was indeed true. You could consider memberships to your local chapter of the ISA or to ASCA as being nice to haves. You don't need them immediately, but those directories, being on the ISA directory Find an Arborist and being on the ASCA directory, to me, those are potential leads. So why not? Why not increase your potential for success in the very beginning? Getting a couple of jobs will pay off that membership, and it will also save you money when you want to go to workshops and things like that to network with other arborists. And that's another way I've been able to get clients, is that people will send me jobs that they don't want to do themselves. So for this first category of what I considered must have, it came out to $6,917, and this LLC fee that I didn't mention was $800. So plus or minus $7,700 or so for what I consider essential. So now we're on to the second section of what I think are nice to haves. I did just notice this, I have tree tags duplicated, so do ignore that. I knew that I was going to be doing construction projects, so this software called Bluebeam for $330 a year is really helpful for reviewing plans. Just makes things really easy, and I'll be doing a series of videos on how I use it to basically review plans and draw tree protection plans. Then hard hats, if you're working on a construction site, that's $100. Laser pointers are good for pointing at different parts of trees. You have to buy specific ones that are bright enough in the daylight, and the one that I found is it's not very good quality, but it was cheap. It was $15. And pole pruners, pole saw, hand pruners. I actually rarely use these, so this could go in the next category, but again, it's going to vary depending on what kind of work you do. I also had my accountant help me estimate the taxes that I had to pay, and because I screwed up the first time paying taxes, he made me a little guide in video format of how to pay my taxes. So if you are not an idiot, you could save $270 in your first year. Then phone service, website domain, and websites for a year. They're in this category because you may already have access to this. So your phone. I had 2 phones because I wanted to maintain some semblance of work-life balance, but joke's on me because I'm using one phone now. The other phone just crapped out. So this $1,000 for your phone service, it could just be part of your personal expenses. The website domain was for my actual website, so I didn't want businessname.wordpress.com or anything like that. So I have businessname.com, and that's $84 a year. To pay for the website, host the website thing, I had Wix, that was $132 a year. I put this in nice to have because you can obviously do businessname.wordpress or .blogspot or whatever. It could just be a landing page. Then office supplies, miscellaneous, $140. If you're fully digital, you could probably skip this. Binoculars, I got some fancy ones from Vortex, $200. You could get something way cheaper. And then here's the computer setup. I got a mechanical keyboard, a monitor, a tower, and a printer, and these added up to about $1,000. If you have an existing laptop, you can use that. Mine was just not good enough, and so I decided to upgrade to a used gaming PC and setup. The gaming PC part was just to have good graphics to run the programs for video editing. And again, the work-life balance, I was trying to get a separate work phone, and so that ended up being $600. Again, some of this is going to depend on what work you anticipate doing. I knew that I was going to be doing construction projects because I did a lot of those when I was working for the previous tree company. But if you're in a place that does not have that much construction, you may not need tree tags. You may also just purchase them once you get jobs. If you know that you're not doing any construction related projects for a while, you won't need the special plan review software. You don't need hard hat. If you already have a phone and you already have a computer setup, even if it's just a little laptop, you really don't need much processing power to do your basic reports. In total, this category came out to $42.70 for me. So technically you could save $4,300 right off the bat. Alright, so this is my last category of optional. If you are someone who is doing construction projects, you need the book by Nelda Matheny and Jim Clark about trees and construction. $50. The Guide to Plant Appraisal. I think this will also vary for you depending on what kind of work you do. If you're just doing basic tree consultations, you may not need this yet, but $180. Business coaching. I had a client who was a business coach, so I did a couple of sessions and I stopped pretty soon after that, so totally optional. I knew I was going to do tree inventories and I was trying out a new system. I had a tool belt before, but I was trying a Patagonia fanny pack, and that's what I use now. So maybe that's more like 70 something bucks. I got some work overalls and that I never used. I did purchase a boot dryer. This helps in the rainy season to just dry out your shoes. $60. And when I first started my business, I was a renter and I was not sure how long I would be at that address, so I actually got a UPS mailbox. I forget if this $4.55, that might be for a year. Obviously you don't have to do that. I know a lot of people who just use their actual addresses, or maybe you can get a PO box. I think that's a different price, but the benefit of the UPS mailbox is that it actually gives a physical address, whereas a PO box, there are people who don't ship or don't accept PO boxes. Then I applied for the RCA for $100. Then I got Google Workspace for a professional email, which is jennifer@companyname.com. Totally optional, $12 a month for $144, and then a logo, $350. So the total for that category is $1,770. So much of that last category was not necessary, but I just wanted to be honest about what I ended up doing. And in total, what I considered non-negotiables was about $7,000. Then the nice to have category, that was about $4,300 extra. And then the last category of optional was $1,800. So maybe a minimum of $7,000 to start with. Some of the things, some of the ways that you can save money is to use what you already have and sort of suffer through it. Maybe you could get a Google Voice number instead of getting a totally separate line. You could talk to older arborists if you know them and see if there's any gear that you can get from them. Things like boots, it would be nice to get some good ones, but if you're on a budget, you can always just get something cheap first and wear it out, then upgrade to something better. A lot of my stuff, I would say at least half of the things I purchased, it ended up being secondhand. So my entire computer setup, my phone, all of that was secondhand. I did a lot of Facebook Marketplace shopping. I also went to estate sales and garage sales, and I would even buy stuff like office supplies in those places just because they're getting rid of everything. Those are low value items compared to other stuff. Generally, the pricing is going to be very good. One of the things that my mentor at the time told me was to start a business account as soon as possible and put $10,000 in there. I initially just put 5,000 and then I found myself contributing more to it. So I think that's a good metric to put $10,000 in there. And I would say a lot of the expenses I incur now, like my insurance, it is like a big old one-time bill. So once I've paid it, because I don't have things like a car payment or any recurring payments associated with the business, I know that I'm good, and any income that's coming in is just going to be going to taxes, paying for my salary, things like that. And I just, even right now, I have depleted my business bank account a little bit just to put into my retirement accounts. So I'm being very conservative, only buying the books that I need, only buying what I absolutely need right now, because once I get more jobs later in the year, I can go and purchase those things that can wait. That's what I've got for a breakdown sort of the startup expenses. I'll probably do another video of annual operating expenses, but it's going to vary depending on the person and the cost of living. I'm in a fairly expensive area, so maybe these expenses are pretty high.